Welcome to Political Perspectives. I'm Hugo Gurdon. If you're joining us on YouTube, please like and subscribe to the Washington Examiner's YouTube channel. I'm joined today by Jim Antle, who is executive editor of the Washington Examiner magazine. And Jim, let's talk about the extraordinary goings-on with trade war, tariffs, market turmoil. There's been a jump in the stock prices on all the various indices since President Trump announced a 90-day pause in tariffs.
In the meantime, there will be a 90-day pause on the reciprocal tariffs as these negotiations are ongoing.
But to some extent, that's a reflection of the extraordinary damage that was being done to everybody's savings in the past week when something like $6 trillion was wiped off the value of their savings and of investments. So what I wanted to ask is, to what extent has there been and is there still a danger to President Trump in that he won election because voters thought that he would get prices under control, there wouldn't be inflation, price rises would stop, and he would run the economy competently?
Right. I mean, one of the big issues that not only helped him in this election, but have really helped him throughout his political career is the perception that he has the business acumen to run the economy competently. And a lot of what people voted for in 2024 was a sort of restoration of the economy of 2019. They wanted to repudiate the high inflation of the pandemic and of the Biden administration.
Right.
And they believed that Trump could return to the pre-pandemic economy of his first term, that that's what he was promising to do. Now, obviously, tariffs and the trade policy component has also always been a big part of what Trump has campaigned on.
Right.
But the dominant issues of the election really were economic normalcy, inflation, having low inflation coinciding with a growing economy and an expanding job market. And the risk is, with all of this stock market volatility and with the impact of having such broad and sweeping tariffs in place themselves, is that people pay higher prices and that the economy more broadly suffers. And we're already seeing reflected in polls where voters' confidence in Trump on the economy is actually lower than his overall approval rating and his approval rating on other issues.
Right. So as I noted it when we at the outset, President Trump announced a 90-day pause in the most punitive tariffs that he was imposing on everybody except China.
Every country in the world who wants to come and negotiate, we are willing to hear you. We're going to go down to a 10% baseline tariff.
The 10% tariffs on everybody, I think, have pretty much stayed in place.
Right.
But the varied ones, which were, imposing 20 and 30 and 40 and 50% tariffs on a variety of different countries, they at least are now suspended for 90 days. The administration has said that something like 75 countries have contacted them to try and strike deals.
Do not retaliate, and you will be rewarded.
We have a tremendous amount of spirit from other countries, including China. China wants to make a deal. They just don't know how quite to go about it.
First of all, does this suggest that President Trump is looking at the polls and thinking, I've got to find some way out of this?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think he's not going to completely abandon this. I think these are his goals. I think he wants to be able to sort of reset the global trade economy in ways that he thinks are more advantageous to the United States. But I do think it is a recognition that there's only so much damage on the economy that he can inflict without, one, jeopardizing those goals, and two, losing political support. So a lot of people who are otherwise very supportive of President Trump in the business community, Republican lawmakers on Capitol Hill, these are people who've been very nervous both about the fact of the tariffs and also the instability around the tariffs.
But the pause that he has put in place, the 90-day pause for negotiations, lends weight to those who say this was always about reducing other people's tariff barriers and getting more of a better deal for the United States. That didn't seem plausible when a lot of the administration, including President Trump, were talking about bringing in trillions of dollars of revenue, and possibly even replacing the income tax, which didn't suggest this was a negotiating tactic. This was a permanent change in the way that revenues were raised. Does President Trump's move to pause for 90 days and negotiate with many different countries suggest that this was always a negotiating tactic?
I think there's an element of it that is a negotiating tactic. I think that President Trump wants more balanced trade between the U.S. and its trading partners, and I think he wanted to use the leverage of access to U.S. markets to gain U.S. access to more foreign markets. But I also do think there are some maximalist goals with regard to China, with regard to reshoring American jobs that will take longer to accomplish, if they are in fact even possible, that are in play here, and that some of the more negotiated parts of this are kind of off-ramps if the stock market and the economy responded too negatively.
Well, you mentioned China, and it is the huge exception to the 90-day pause.
The president just put out a statement announcing an additional tariff on China. The tariff on China will now go up to 125% because China imprudently decided to retaliate against the United States.
China is by far the biggest abuser in history.
In fact, whilst pausing the imposition of tariffs on all of these other countries, President Trump has slapped 125% tariffs on China. There have been arguments over the course of the past week that the real aim is to isolate China. That again produced some skepticism that the best way of isolating the real threat, which I think most people acknowledge is China, is done by alienating all your allies. But given what has happened with the pause for every other country and the massive imposition of tariffs on China, does that lend authority and weight to the argument that this was really all about China?
I think it does. I mean, yes, there is still a very clear domestic component to what Trump wants to do through the tariffs. But China has always been sort of public enemy number one. He wants to pursue decoupling of the American and Chinese economies to the degree possible, and he wants America's top trading partners to become less economically interlinked with China. And a big part of this tariffs agenda is trying to see if he can use that blunt policy instrument as a way of doing just that.
You know, one of the things that makes one doubt that this was always the way that the administration planned it, and that there was some sort of brilliant insight about how we might proceed along this extraordinary bumpy road, is the fact that the turmoil in the markets has produced a split in the administration itself. You would think that if everybody knew this was the way that they were going, that it wouldn't have split the administration, because they'd have thought, oh, well, we know what's coming. But there's been a rather extraordinary public spat between Elon Musk and Peter Navarro, both of them high-level advisors to the president.
When it comes to tariffs and trade, we all understand in the White House, and the American people understand, that Elon's a car manufacturer. But he's not a car manufacturer, he's a car assembler. That's what he does. And he wants the cheap foreign parts, and we understand that. But we want him home.
It does seem to suggest that the tensions of the last week have produced a split in the administration. Is that the right way to look at this?
Well, I think even among the people who are broadly on board with Peter Navarro, there are differences in what different people in the administration want the tariffs to accomplish. But I think the Musk-Navarro debate reflects a broader split in the Republican Party over whether pursuing tariffs in this way is a good idea in the first place. So I think there are really three things at work here. There's Musk is ideologically much closer to the libertarian perspective within the Republican Party than Navarro and a lot of other Trump lieutenants are at this point. Secondly, Musk has his own business interests to think about amid all of the stock market turmoil? And thirdly, if there's a part of the Trump agenda that's getting a lot of political heat, will that mean that his portfolio, Doge, that the president and the rest of the White House are going to be less supportive of that initiative because they're taking so much flack over the tariffs, which has been a much longer term project of President Trump. So I think there are several reasons why Musk is really being so public in his disagreements with Navarro and all this.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be interesting to see how much time President Trump has to, as it were, get this right. Now, before public opposition to the meltdown in markets, and okay, there's been a bounce back, but undermines the rest of his agenda. I mean, there's the whole, the hope that the tax cuts that were put in place at the end of 2017 will be renewed. There's a whole lot more that is to be achieved. It seems extraordinary that within a space of 3 months so much has been done. But there's always a danger to the rest of the agenda. But we'll leave it there for the moment, Jim. Thanks very much for joining us. Thank you for joining us. Join us again next time on Political Perspectives.